Hello there with Brady Quinn. I am Chris Hassel. We are also joined by Chip Patterson of the Cover 3 podcast as we dive headfirst into some of the best matchups of Week 6 in college football. There are only two 2-0 teams in the Big Ten East, Chip, and they're going head-to-head in Columbus. Number 4 Ohio State hosting number 25 Michigan State. It's going to be a real defensive test for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the best defense that Justin Fields and this Ohio State offense has faced so far. It's going to be a fascinating test for him as we see Fields continue to jump up among our sort of abstract power rankings of the best quarterbacks in the country. But I'm also interested on the other side of the ball for both teams because the Michigan State offense has been all over the place. It's been inconsistent. There have been times when Brian Lewerke has things going, and there have been times where that offense, like against Arizona State, has really, really struggled. And Ohio State is elite at the defensive line. Chase Young leading that group. But I do think that some of its linebackers might be put in some compromising positions. So the back half of Ohio State's defense, how are they going to behave against Michigan State? Are they going to continue shutting teams out and shutting teams down during the quality minutes? Or is this going to be a situation where Michigan State, with its defense, maybe also gets a chance offensively to expose some of the back half of Ohio State's defense in a way that no Ohio State opponent has done yet? All in all, I still see this game as one, especially being played in Columbus, that Ohio State is going to win. But as we continue to consider whether or not Ohio State is not just the 4th best team in the country, but the best team in the country, I feel like I'm going into this game, my notepad's out, and I'm taking notes. I don't think Sparty's going to win, but they're a solid enough football team that they're going to be revealing bigger truths about the Buckeyes.
Chip, I don't know what you're talking about, revealing what in the back end. This Ohio State defense is ready for anything Michigan State's going to throw at them. It's a very predictable offense. You talked about the inconsistencies this year. I don't think they're all of a sudden going to find any offense in Columbus versus Ohio State defense as good as they've been playing this year. Just look at the point differential. I understand Ohio State hasn't been tested this year, and Michigan State's probably played a little bit more difficult of a schedule. But bottom line is this Ohio State can put up a bunch of points as well as hold teams down. On the flip side, I'm not sure what to expect from this Michigan State team, especially in big games where Brian Lewerke hasn't always played his best. So defensively, do I anticipate them potentially stopping the rushing attack for Ohio State? Sure, it's the identity of Michigan State and Mark D'Antonio. It's what they do. But can they account for Justin Fields as well in the rushing attack? Can they be able to get pressure on him in the pocket and disrupt this offensive passing attack as Fields has continued to get better and better and better? So I don't have any reservations about Ohio State winning this game and also being able to cover that big number right there, laying 20 points. I think this is going to be a big win for Ohio State, a solid win. Even though it may be a low-scoring game, I don't think we're going to have to worry about Ohio State not scoring the points. It's probably going to be more Michigan State.
And that, again, is a night game for Ohio State after that night game blowout in Lincoln, Nebraska last week. Elsewhere in the Big Ten, you have number 14 Iowa, still perfect this season against number 19 Michigan. This is in Ann Arbor. I'll start with you, Brady, because you were texting each other last night. You were watching film from both the Hawkeyes and the Wolverines. What do you see in this one?
Well, first off, they share a common opponent. If you look at the fact Michigan opened up with Middle Tennessee State, that's who Iowa played last week, and you look at the stats, maybe it can be a little bit telling. This Iowa team put up more yards and more production on offense and defense, held Middle Tennessee State to less production. So if we're gleaming anything off of that, this game should be a pretty evenly matched matchup between both the Wolverines and Iowa. But I've got some big-time reservations really about both teams. For starters with Iowa, Iowa's defensive front hasn't really got much pressure this year. Will they be able to get pressure on Shea Patterson with an offensive line of Michigan that struggled? I believe so, but they're going to have to move around A.J. Epinesa as teams have done a really good job for matching up against him and putting different schemes against him. But, you know, this Michigan offense still at times struggles to get the ball out to the playmakers at times. I see them running the football into loaded boxes where they don't have the advantage in the blocking schemes. And so Shea Patterson is going to have to continue to be part of the rushing attack. Had 3 rushing touchdowns last week. That's going to have to continue. Defensively, you know, Michigan still struggles in man-to-man defense versus some of these different crossing routes that you see. We saw it against Rutgers. Even though they held them in a shutout, there's still some production that's going to be out there. Iowa, I'm sure, is looking at this film and saying, we can hit some of those plays that Rutgers left out there on the field. So I definitely feel like this is going to be an evenly matched team. I give the edge to Michigan because they've got more athleticism, more team speed, and they're playing at home.
Chip, what do you think?
This game is gross. This game is so gross. I look at this, and these are two teams that, like Iowa, you're coming off of one of the best offensive performances in school history, but it also was against Middle Tennessee, and so you like the momentum, but you're like, all right, okay, maybe this is going to be a team that's a little bit overvalued. And then Michigan, 52-0, gets Chris Ash fired. You feel like you've got the good momentum about your offense back. But again, I feel like we're both above market value with this one too. And so when these two teams clash in Ann Arbor, I also go back to the series history here. Jim Harbaugh hasn't beaten Iowa. And so there is a lot of motivation for both of these teams to be able to try and get out of here with the win. But the sort of underperforming for the season as a whole is really what I'm focused on. And I really wonder for this Michigan Wolverines team, favored by 3.5 in a game that really is a total toss-up. I wonder if they're going to be able to, A, cover this number, B, even win this game, and if so, what happens next after that? Because winning this game doesn't necessarily require Michigan's best football, but putting together the kind of season that is going to make Michigan fans happy and proud of the product of the field is going to take Michigan's best football.
That number's come down, by the way. When it opened up, it was close to a touchdown on the side of the Wolverines. But Iowa's had their number of late. 5 of the last 6 games have gone to the Iowa Hawkeyes in this series. Just one win for Michigan since you were in college, Brady. That's been a while. One win since 2006. Let's move to the Big 12. Number 21, Oklahoma State is at Texas Tech. Chip, both of these teams already have a loss in conference play.
Yeah, I don't think that Oklahoma State's going to be getting a second one here. This is a time where I look at the Cowboys after a good performance the week before at Kansas State in a spot where I thought they might be a little bit susceptible. We're going to go right back. I mean, Chuba Hubbard, 938 yards at this point in the season. My body is ready for another 2,000-yard rusher, and I think Chuba Hubbard's going to be able to take us there. Combined with Spencer Sanders and Tylan Wallace, I've said it here on the 4 o'clock college football show. It's my favorite quarterback, running back, wide receiver trio in the entire country. And as they, go on this trip, we need to look at Oklahoma State's defense and see if they can take some steps forward, because while they've got a little 21 beside their name, I think that some of the vulnerabilities that the Cowboys have on defense are going to prevent them from really being able to challenge some of the best teams in the Big 12. So if you want something that we're circling, that we're really looking at for the Cowboys in a tough road test in conference play, in a game favored by double digits that they should win, let's look at Oklahoma State's defense and see if we can get a better performance out of them.
I think this game all kind of revolves around whether or not Alan Bowman plays at quarterback for Texas Tech. Jett Duffy, between him and Jackson Tyner last week, looked probably the best between the two. Should start this week if Bowman can't go. But if Bowman can go, they're not going to be able to keep pace with this Oklahoma State offense, as Chip talked about. This is one of the better trios between quarterback, running back, wide receiver you're going to find in all of college football. It starts off with Chuba Hubbard leading the country in rushing. I mean, he's on a ridiculous pace right now. He's not getting enough love from people for potentially being the best back and being more in the Heisman conversation, especially after sitting behind Justice Hill, draft pick to the Baltimore Ravens. But when you look at this group, it's all about offensive productivity and going up against a defense at Texas Tech that's been known to give up some big plays. We saw that last week versus Oklahoma, but also the fact that they've got a new system. Yes, they're trying to be more aggressive, mix up some of their coverages, mix up some of their looks, but they're also still trying to work on a lot of things on that side of the football. And I just think there's going to be some growing pains still for Matt Wells' group at Texas Tech on the defensive side of the football, especially going up against this tough group with Oklahoma State and their productivity.
That one noon Eastern on Saturday. Oklahoma State on the road in Lubbock, Texas. Let's move to the Pac-12, Chip. And you put a couple Pac-12 teams on upset alert earlier today on CBS Sports HQ. Number 13, Oregon, the highest-ranked Pac-12 team, against a Cal team coming off its first loss of the season.
Now, it's only an upset alert. It's an alert.
Mm-hmm.
But if this game wasn't in Autzen Stadium, I think that I might even have it as an upset pick here. But I think that with Cal looking to bounce back, and with Oregon kind of in that position where you're starting to feel comfortable and you're starting to look ahead at the schedule, you're starting to see what's coming up next. Justin Herbert and that offense really starting to take off and really starting to catch a rhythm. I think that this is a spot where the Ducks want to jump all over Cal early, because if the Bears lay out a couple little traps and they lure the Ducks into a lower scoring game, if they are able to, like they did with Washington, sort of get them to play their kind of ball, then I think Oregon might be in trouble. Now, Oregon with that great offensive line is going to be able to do a good job of creating some lanes up front, but whether it's Evan Weaver or the rest of that Cal defense, they're just so good at swarming to the ball. They're so good at playing disciplined football that I think that Oregon wants to jump out. They want to score touchdowns early, and they want to make Cal press. They want to make Chase Garbers try to push the ball down the field and try to put together the kind of statistical game that he had on the road at Ole Miss earlier this season. So I said it was an upset alert, because if Oregon sits around, slow start, thinking that they can just look past Cal, I think that would be a very, very big mistake against one of the better teams in their own division.
Well, I don't know that Chase Garbers is going to go into this game for Cal. It looks like it might be Devin Monster. If that's the case, that's a huge blow to this Cal team. Garbers has played well at times this year and actually provided somewhat of a passing attack that's been a little bit hit or miss, but more so hit than miss, with the exception of this past week. So if they go with Monster, expect to see a lot of the rushing attack with Christopher Brown Jr., and I think that plays in the hands of Oregon. I just don't think Cal's going to be able to keep pace with this explosive offensive attack from Oregon. They've got 2 weeks to prepare for this one, and on top of it, this Oregon defense shouldn't be underestimated either. They're playing some really good football this year, extremely physical at the line of scrimmage and stopping the run. So I fully suspect this to be a low-scoring game, but one in which Oregon's able to win by a 3-touchdown margin.
California went into Washington and won earlier on this season. See if they can keep it close and try to eke one out at Oregon as well.
Aided by a little bit of a lightning delay.
Yeah, how long was that?
It was long.
3 in the morning, something like
I think it ended around that time.
A weird game. So a bit of an asterisk by that first win for the Cal Golden Bears. Let's move to the SEC. Are you going to put the Georgia Bulldogs on upset alert, Chip? They are playing the Tennessee Volunteers. It is a rivalry game.
Yeah, I think I'm putting Jeremy Pruitt on the U-Haul alert, as in you might need to be moving pretty soon, especially with this report. ESPN.com's Adam Rittenberg reporting, citing a source saying that Philip Fulmer says he's ready to coach if he needs to. Goodness gracious. Like, it's one thing to be looking over your shoulder at an assistant that might be on the rise gunning for your job. What happens when you got to look over the shoulder for your boss coming? I couldn't imagine being Jeremy Pruitt right now, and especially with this being a game where Tennessee fans in Neyland Stadium, they just want to see this team be competitive. They don't expect the Vols to win this game, but if that team looks as lifeless as it has at times this season, if that team is as poor with its execution as it has been at times this season, if Georgia goes in there and blows the doors off Tennessee, well, then that is only going to make the Tennessee fan angst really crank up. And Tennessee fan angst, as we've seen before with the Greg Schiano potential hire, with the Mike Leach potential hire, we've seen Tennessee fan angst when it is lit on fire. It can do amazing things, and not always in the good way. And so I'm very, very much interested in seeing whether the Vols are able to be competitive, show some pride, and give the fans in Neyland Stadium some hope in the Jeremy Pruitt era as a whole.
I think Phil Fulmer's watching Mack Brown have so much fun in North Carolina right now. I'll say, hey, maybe I could come back and coach and do this again. So I would fully be ready to see that return if I'm Tennessee right now, because I don't think this will be much of a ball game. Look, bottom line is Georgia had a bye after a tough physical game versus Notre Dame to prepare themselves for this SEC matchup. Jake Fromm's been playing well this year, taking care of the football, taking what defenses give him, and I thought he really showed out in some tough spots versus Notre Dame versus pressure. And then on the other side, DeAndre Swift, or who I should say who he's handing off to, DeAndre Swift, as well as this talented stable of running backs. There's so much there, I think, that Tennessee has not really proven this year to be able to stop or limit. So I like Georgia laying a big number here. This won't be much of a competitive game.
Yeah, a little side note, I had the weekend off, and going into the season, I was kind of pinpointing this game as one to maybe go to check out the atmosphere in Tennessee. Then after week one, I was like, no way, not going there.
You could go tailgate. I just wouldn't go to the game.
I don't know. I don't want
go to the Vol
any part
Navy.
of that. What's that?
Yeah, go down to the water, go down to the Vol Navy, go down to the water, hop on the boat. I mean, I did CBS Sports HQ hits from the middle of the Vol Navy last year. It's a great atmosphere.
Well, I'm heading to Ann Arbor instead for Iowa and Michigan.
Oh, you get to see the blowout then. That'll be good.
Yeah, right. LSU coming off a bye week, Chip. They are number 5 in the country, and they're out of SEC play, but they're not playing a patsy here. Utah State out of the Mountain West, potentially a Mountain West champion this season. 14-2 in their last 16 games. Great quarterback play as well.
Yeah, great quarterback play from Jordan Love, and they are an offense that I think, aren't going to be able to make this game incredibly close, but I don't think they're going to be shut out. I don't think this is going to be like the Georgia Southern game with LSU earlier this year. It's the other side of the ball for Utah State that I'm really concerned about because when we've seen Utah State against Power 5 competition earlier this season against Wake Forest, Jamie Newman was able to push that ball all the way down the field pretty much every single time they got it. It was really only Wake Forest's own errors that kept them from making that game more of a blowout. It was a very close game, actually. They had to come back and win. I don't think LSU is going to be making the same errors that Wake Forest made. I think this is another game where Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson, the rest of that entire group is going to be lighting it up once again. I don't know if we'll have 6 touchdown passes again, but it's definitely in the cards. I think LSU hits 40, and I think that they could probably cover this big spread.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be able to cover the spread in part because this is a Utah State team that very well could be undefeated at this point. You talked about that loss to Wake Forest who ended up coming back in the game. As much as you thought maybe Wake Chip could have come back, I kind of felt like Utah State let them off the hook. This is all about Jordan Love. He's a legitimate NFL prospect. He knows what's on the table. Going up against this tough LSU defense, a lot of evaluators, a lot of scouts are going to be watching him to see how he handles the conditions, the pressure. And I also think it's going to be his mobility that allows him to make some plays from time to time that keep them in this ball game. So if I was a betting man, I'm looking at this, LSU coming off a bye, extra time to prepare, there's no doubt they win the football game. And I actually think this game will hit the over. But 27.5 points, that's a lot for me. I don't know if I'm necessarily laying the points there. I think the better bet is the over-under and taking the over.
And Utah State kind of feels like they let a couple slip away. That Wake Forest game earlier this season, and last season they almost beat number 11 Michigan State in East Lansing. So maybe a chance for a tight one there.